The dark history of the Chateau Marmont. The Chateau Marmont has kept Hollywood's darkest secrets for nearly a century, and now those secrets are finally coming to light. This Gothic castle perched above Sunset Boulevard has witnessed John Belushi's fatal speedball overdose that shocked the world, sexual harassment allegations against billionaire owner Balazs, and a pandemic labor scandal that turned A-list celebrities against the very place they once called sanctuary. From Led Zeppelin riding motorcycles through the lobby to Jean Harlow's secret affair with Clark Gable, nearly a century of Hollywood misbehavior has played out behind those soundproof walls, and the bill has finally come due. February 1st, 1929, marked the opening of what Los Angeles attorney Fred Horowitz envisioned as luxury apartments, modeled after France's Chateau d'Amboise. Working alongside architects Arnold A. Weitzman and William Douglas Lee, Horowitz constructed a 7-story Norman Revival structure at 8221 Sunset Boulevard using Class AA steel-reinforced concrete. And that construction decision would prove equally effective at containing secrets as it was at surviving earthquakes. The thick concrete walls were remarkably soundproof, which meant that for the next 100 years, they would silence some of Hollywood's most scandalous moments. When the Great Depression hit, plans changed fast. Silent film pioneer Albert E. Smith, co-founder of Vitagraph Studios, purchased the Chateau Marmont property for $750,000 in 1931 and converted it into a hotel. But he kept the residential kitchens and living rooms so guests could actually live there rather than simply stay. Smith added bungalows, cottages, and a swimming pool, then hired silent film actress Ann Little as manager. Columbia Pictures boss Harry Cohn gave his young stars advice during the 1930s that would define the Chateau Marmont for generations to come. He told them, "If you must get into trouble, do it at the Chateau Marmont." And that's exactly what they did. Classic Hollywood's most forbidden romances played out in those bungalows. Jean Harlow conducted her passionate affair with married Clark Gable in Bungalow 2 during the filming of the film Red Dust in 1932, while studio heads scrambled to keep their biggest stars' secrets from destroying their careers. The soundproof walls that would later enable Led Zeppelin to ride motorcycles through the lobby in the 1970s first served to muffle the sounds of Hollywood's greatest love stories. German-Jewish banker Erwin Brettauer fled Nazi Germany and purchased the Chateau Marmont in 1942, then did something radical for the time by welcoming black guests and breaking Hollywood's color line. Duke Ellington reportedly wrote an entire album in his head while walking those corridors. Miles Davis held late-night jam sessions in the Garden, and Sidney Poitier found refuge there when other Hollywood establishments turned him away. The hotel became a haven not just for misbehavior, but for those Hollywood excluded everywhere else. Director Nicholas Ray turned Bungalow 3 into his creative headquarters during the 1950s, where James Dean and Natalie Wood rehearsed scenes for the film Rebel Without a Cause, while conducting their own forbidden romance. Ray later said the Chateau Marmont's atmosphere of secrecy and acceptance made it the perfect place to explore the teenage rebellion that would define his masterpiece. Balazs acquired the Chateau Marmont for approximately $12 to $12.5 million in 1990, and by then it had already cemented its reputation. 63 rooms, suites, cottages, and 4 bungalows spread across a property with no traditional lobby, an underground garage, and labyrinthine corridors that made tracking guests nearly impossible. Those soundproof walls meant what happened behind closed doors stayed there. March 5th, 1982. The morning that changed everything. Bungalow number 3 became John Belushi's home on February 28, 1982. According to Sean Levy's definitive history, the castle on Sunset, the 33-year-old Saturday Night Live star arrived, described as a time bomb, a waste site, a mess. He was sweaty, flabby, edgy, pale, disheveled, worn to a stump at 33. The screenplay called Noble Rot was supposed to be his project there, but he would never finish it. What happened the night of March 4th into the early morning of March 5th has been reconstructed through grand jury testimony, court documents, and investigative journalist Bob Woodward's definitive account in his book, Wired. Belushi spent the evening with Canadian drug dealer Kathy Evelyn Smith, known as Kathy Silverbag, along with Saturday Night Live writer Nelson Lyon, hitting the On the Rocks Club and the Rainbow Bar and Grill. Robin Williams stopped by the bungalow after performing at the Comedy Store, snorted cocaine, and left quickly because Smith gave him what he later called a creepy feeling, and he described her as a lowlife. Robert De Niro, staying in another suite at the Chateau Marmont, briefly returned to check on Belushi after 3 in the morning. Smith administered multiple speedball injections throughout that long night, that deadly combination of cocaine and heroin that would prove fatal. Around 8 o'clock in the morning, Belushi showered and fell asleep while complaining of chest congestion. Between 9:30 and 10:15, Smith checked on him and found him wheezing and shivering. He told her, "Just do not leave me alone." Those would be his last documented words. Smith departed at 10:15, taking the syringe and spoon with her. Personal trainer Bill Superfoot Wallace arrived just after noon to deliver a typewriter and found Belushi unresponsive in bed. The coroner's examination began at 4:37 that afternoon and revealed cocaine levels of 0.407 milligrams, described as an extremely dangerous, deadly dose, along with fresh puncture wounds, swollen brain, an enlarged liver, and lungs weighing twice their normal weight. Acute cocaine and heroin intoxication was the official ruling, a speedball overdose that killed John Belushi in bungalow number 3 at the Chateau Marmont, and Hollywood would never look at the hotel quite the same way again. Justice, eventually. Canada became Kathy Smith's refuge initially, but in June 1982, she gave the National Enquirer a paid interview for $15,000, and her confession was chilling. She admitted she killed John Belushi. She said she did not mean to, but she was responsible. She confessed to administering 11 speedballs that night, 1 count of second-degree murder, and 13 counts of administering controlled substances landed her in front of Judge David A. Horowitz in June 1986, where she pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter. 3 years was the sentence, but she served only 15 months at the California Institution for Women in Chino before deportation to Canada sent her home. August 16, 2020, marked Kathy Smith's death at the age of 73. The woman who administered the drugs that killed John Belushi outlived him by 38 years. Other tragedies in paradise. John Belushi's death earned the most headlines, but the Chateau Marmont collected other tragedies too. Legendary fashion photographer Helmut Newton made the Chateau Marmont his home for nearly 50 years, right up until January 23, 2004, when the 83-year-old suffered a fatal heart attack while driving his Cadillac out of the hotel driveway. His car crashed into a retaining wall after he lost control, and Cedars-Sinai Medical Center is where he was pronounced dead. Owner Andre Balazs witnessed the aftermath and told the press that he happened to be there the morning Newton had his heart attack and crashed his car at the foot of the drive, and that he ended up in the emergency room with him. A memorial plaque marks that crash site today. The Doors frontman Jim Morrison had a habit of drunkenly swinging between windows and balconies using drain pipes, and in 1971, one of those rain gutters failed and sent him falling 2 stories onto a shed roof. He survived the fall and later said he had used the 8th of his 9 lives. But Paris is where he died, just over a year later, in July 1971. Director Oliver Stone later recreated this infamous Chateau Marmont scene in his 1991 film The Doors, cementing the hotel's connection to rock and roll mythology. Film crews captured Heath Ledger in 2006 using cocaine on the Chateau Marmont's front balcony. 2 years later, on January 22, 2008, a prescription drug overdose killed him in New York. In 2012, Lindsay Lohan was banned from the Chateau Marmont for unpaid bills totaling nearly $50,000, marking a new kind of scandal for the hotel and proving that even in the digital age, the castle on Sunset Boulevard could still generate headlines for celebrity excess. The Chateau Marmont has witnessed Hollywood excess for nearly a century, but the deaths tell only part of its dark history. On November 9, 2017, the New York Times published an investigation that alleged André Balazs, the billionaire hotelier who had owned the Chateau Marmont since 1990, engaged in a pattern of sexual misconduct dating back to at least the early 1990s. Actress Amanda Anka, the wife of Jason Bateman, provided the most detailed allegation. She alleged that in November 2014, during a post-premiere party for Horrible Bosses 2 at Balazs' London property known as the Chiltern Firehouse, Balazs reached under her skirt and grabbed her crotch as she climbed a firehouse-style ladder during a hotel tour. Witnesses included Jennifer Aniston, Jason Sudeikis, and Charlie Day. Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who is married to Charlie Day, told the Times she witnessed behavior by André Balazs that was inappropriate and offensive. Jason Bateman confronted Balazs and spat gum in his face, according to reports. The Bateman's publicist confirmed to the newspaper that the account of André Balazs' outrageous and vile behavior on that night in London is factual. A former Chateau Marmont employee, The Times, identified only as Sarah, alleged Balazs sexually assaulted her after a dinner date in the early 1990s. She said he pinned her against a wall, covered her mouth with his mouth, and pushed his fingers inside her. An anonymous media executive, 26 years old, alleged Balazs grabbed her crotch at a 2013 party. The Hollywood Reporter published its own investigation in September 2020 based on interviews with more than 30 former Chateau Marmont employees. 5 of them, 1 man and 4 women, alleged Balazs inappropriately touched them, typically on their buttocks while intoxicated. One restaurant team member said he would be out in the garden with friends and they would be snorting cocaine off their dinner plates, and we all saw it. Balazs did not respond to the New York Times' repeated requests for comment in 2017. In 2020, he issued a statement calling the allegations simply false and cited the hotel's code of conduct prohibiting any unwanted sexual contact. The Standard Hotels, the chain Balazs founded in 1999, terminated his employment by March 2017. A Standard spokesperson later told The Hollywood Reporter that there were a multitude of business and personal factors that contributed to the company's termination of André's employment, removal from the board, and repurchase of his interests. Criminal prosecution never came, and André Balazs remains the owner of the Chateau Marmont today.
March 2020. The pandemic betrayal. Sexual misconduct allegations damaged the Chateau Marmont's reputation among insiders. But what happened in March 2020 turned Hollywood openly against it. 248 employees, learned on March 19, 2020, that they were terminated just 2 days after being told the hotel could no longer offer work hours. And this happened the same day Los Angeles entered COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. No severance came with those terminations, not even for employees with decades of service. Health insurance ended 12 days later, on March 31st, 2020, right in the middle of a global pandemic. Bellman Walter Almendarez had given the Chateau Marmont 23 years of his life. He told the press that they got nothing and that they were thrown on the street like insects. Housekeeper Martha Moran spent 33 years there, and as a single mother with diabetes requiring medication, she found herself without income for months while waiting for unemployment benefits. Parking valet Carlos Barrera worked at the Chateau Marmont for 40 years before a text message laid him off with no retirement savings to show for it. Public backlash pushed Balazs to launch a GoFundMe on March 26, 2020, where he contributed $100,000 toward a $200,000 goal. Relief payments ranging from $350 for newer staff to over $5,000 for long-tenured workers finally arrived in late May 2020, more than 2 months after termination. February 5, 2021, brought the hotel $1.95 million in federal Paycheck Protection Program funds. But at that point, only 19 of approximately 250 laid-off workers had been rehired. Unite here. Local 11 alleged the funds were not properly used for payroll, while the hotel claimed full compliance with federal regulations. Plans to convert to a members-only club were announced on July 28, 2020. And to workers who had spent decades there, it felt like the final insult, as if they had been discarded so the hotel could become even more exclusive. Jane Fonda released a video statement on February 5, 2021, supporting a formal boycott organized by Unite Here Local 11 and the fired workers. She said the Chateau Marmont fired almost its entire workforce. No job security, no affordable health care during a pandemic. Celebrity endorsements for the boycott grew rapidly and included Alfonso Cuarón, Spike Lee, Issa Rae, Gabrielle Union, Adam McKay, Sarah Silverman, Daveed Diggs, Amanda Seyfried, Edie Falco, Lena Headey, Martin Sheen, Tom Morello, Quinta Brunson, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Roxane Gay, among others. Industry unions backed the boycott too. SAG-AFTRA, IATSE, Teamsters Local 399, Writers Guild of America West, and Directors Guild of America all threw their support behind the workers. Production cancellations started hitting. Aaron Sorkin's Being the Ricardos, starring Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem, canceled its Chateau Marmont shoot on April 22, 2021, just hours before production was set to begin. Paramount Plus's The Offer canceled its planned shoot there in August 2021. March 27, 2022, brought the most dramatic confrontation when Unite Here organized a picket line outside Jay-Z and Beyoncé's annual Oscar Gold party at the Chateau Marmont. Celebrities who crossed that picket line and were met with jeers of shame on you included Kim Kardashian,
Khloe Kardashian, Diddy, Rihanna, Jessica Alba, John Hamm, Tyler Perry, and DJ Khaled. Rosario Dawson later claimed she was unaware of the boycott and vowed not to return until disputes were settled. The Chateau Marmont had become a liability in Hollywood for the first time in its history. September 16, 2020, brought The Hollywood Reporter's investigation based on interviews
with more than 30 former Chateau Marmont employees, and the allegations painted a picture of systematic racial discrimination and a hostile work environment. Housekeeper Sonia Sanchez alleged a guest masturbated in front of her, and when she reported it to management, they allowed the guest to continue his stay. She said they made her feel unsafe at work, and every time she saw him, she was reliving her experience. Server Gina Steffi, who is white and worked there for 6 years, said she was favored there, given unwarranted opportunities, privileges, sections, and shifts that her colleagues of color were not. She added that she apparently fit a certain look that Andre and upper management preferred. 3 lawsuits followed. In December 2020, Adrian Jules, a black guest relations employee, filed suit alleging employment discrimination, sexual harassment, and workplace harassment. Thomasina Gross, a black events server, filed on January 27, 2021, alleging racial discrimination after being repeatedly passed over for promotions while training less qualified white employees who received them. April Blackwell, a black front desk employee, filed on April 26, 2021, alleging a drunk guest used the N-word when she refused his demands, and a white colleague told her that back then he could have owned her. Arbitration is where all the lawsuits ended up, and The Hollywood Reporter confirmed in December 2022 that multiple civil lawsuits alleging racial discrimination have since been settled, but settlement amounts remain undisclosed. The National Labor Relations Board investigated charges filed on July 1, 2021, alleging hotel management engaged in surveillance of workers' union activities, and the board found that the employer violated the National Labor Relations Act, which required the hotel to post notices affirming workers' organizing rights. August 25, 2022, marked the day the Chateau Marmont voluntarily recognized Unite Here Local 11, and the members' only conversion plans were officially abandoned. Andre Balazs and Union co-president Kurt Peterson issued a joint statement declaring that all prior disputes had been laid to rest. Workers unanimously ratified their first union contract on December 22, 2022, and the union described it as setting a new standard for boutique hotels. That contract delivered a 25% immediate wage increase for returning non-tipped workers, and housekeepers would earn $25 per hour within 1 year. Free family health insurance came to workers averaging 60 or more hours monthly, along with union pension fund participation, free legal services for immigration and tenant issues, and recognition of Juneteenth as a paid holiday, making the Chateau Marmont one of the first hotels to do so. Strong protections around panic buttons and sexual harassment reporting were included, plus unprecedented immigrant protections. Kurt Peterson told the press that the Chateau Marmont definitely negotiated in good faith. It is rare to achieve a contract so quickly, especially a first contract. They deserve enormous credit for that. 63 rooms, suites, cottages, and 4 bungalows make up the Chateau Marmont, operating today as a traditional hotel, with room rates ranging from approximately $435 to over $1,069 per night. Andre Balazs still owns it. What one publication called a roaring comeback has characterized the hotel since 2023, with W Magazine's Best Performances Party in January 2024, drawing attendees including Margot Robbie, Greta Gerwig, Emma Stone, and Nicolas Cage. Jay-Z and Beyoncé's Gold Party continued at the venue during the 2024 Oscar season, this time without protests. Sofia Coppola's 2010 film Somewhere was shot entirely at the Chateau Marmont.
and the hotel's melancholic atmosphere became central to the movie's meditation on fame and loneliness. More recently, the final scene of La La Land was filmed in the hotel's penthouse, cementing its status as both a real location and a symbol of Hollywood dreams. One top event planner told the press that for talent, nothing feels more private than Chateau Marmont. When you want quintessential Hollywood, you go to Chateau. The boycott ended, the lawsuits settled, and the union contract was signed, which meant Hollywood returned to the Chateau Marmont. February 1st, 2029 will mark the Chateau Marmont's 100th anniversary, and it remains what it has always been, Hollywood's preferred venue for behavior that cannot happen elsewhere. Those thick concrete walls, poured in 1929 to survive earthquakes, have silenced a century of excess. Bungalow number 3 is where John Belushi died because the Chateau Marmont was the kind of place where nobody asked questions. Helmut Newton spent 50 years there because it allowed him to live exactly as he pleased. Workers were discarded during a pandemic because the hotel had operated for 90 years with minimal accountability. Criminal prosecution never touched the sexual misconduct allegations against André Balazs, and the discrimination lawsuits settled in private arbitration with amounts undisclosed. The hotel that built its reputation on discretion has extended that same discretion to its own darkest chapters. What Harry Cohn told his stars in the 1930s remains true. If you must get into trouble, do it at the Chateau Marmont. The difference now is that we finally know the cost, and workers who made the beds, parked the cars, and kept the secrets for decades while earning less than $25 an hour are the ones who paid it. The castle on Sunset Boulevard still stands, as soundproof and secretive as ever. And the question becomes whether Hollywood has finally learned that some walls shouldn't be so thick that they silence everything behind them.